There we go. Hello everybody, welcome to a Life in a Garden event at Cottrell Studio. Welcome Tom Cottrell, Tom Millwood Cottrell,
Thank you
no
for having
less,
me.
and long-suffering wife Kay, and everybody else who's here. What prompted you to write a memoir? Shall we start with the memoir bit or start with the family history?
Okay.
Or the dirty laundry? Which one? Where should we start?
Well, let's start with that question. What prompted me to write it? And I'd have to be honest, is that I never intended writing this book in the first place. That was really the truth of it. What had happened, and I guess, I'll be probably giving away a lot of the book, but I have to explain that my cousin was murdered in 2013, and I'd launched a runner's guide book on a Sunday morning, and I was just sitting around waiting to see. Morning, hello, come in. We'll start again. Okay, no, it's fine.
Your thumb's in the way. Let's just check the camera and see what. Look at the picture.
Yes, no, it's
Right.
Are we good?
Okay.
Let's
We're
maybe
good, we're
move
rallying.
it a bit that way. And we'll get more things.
I'll edit
Got to
this.
be careful not to move them too much.
Yeah, no, like emphasizing things.
Yeah.
I'll edit this bit out. Hello,
No, that's
ladies.
fine.
Nice to see some men in the audience for a change instead of all the girls.
Gee, okay.
Okay, so where were we?
Shall we go with it? What inspired me to write this? And I was saying that I never intended to write this book in the first place. And the long and the short of it was that my cousin was murdered. I got a message through Facebook, of all places, to say, please phone me. It's about your cousin. I phoned the guy, Jolyon. He's in the book. And the long and the short of it is that he told me my cousin was dead, and the police were looking for me, and they wanted to make contact. So on the Monday, that was on Sunday, on Monday I made contact with the police, and it turns out that he was murdered, and under pretty strange circumstances. His body was in the house for a month before it was discovered, and it was a water meter reader who saw flies going in through the window, and there's a terrible smell throughout the whole neighborhood, which also raises interesting questions.
Why didn't anyone say?
Yeah, you think just mind your own business and don't worry about the bad smell coming from the house. But pretty soon I landed up in the police station, and they said, look, bad Monday morning for you, could you go along to the mortuary and make an identification? So that, so if ever there was I hate Mondays, that was it. So off I went to the mortuary, which in itself was an interesting experience. But what became a little bit more interesting is when I went back to the police station, it took about 2 weeks before I realized that I was the main suspect. That's got that. No. So
We weren't expecting that, were we? So before we go any further, did you kill your cousin?
No, I didn't. So really, for 2 years, I was hounded by the police under all sorts of circumstances, even set with a polygraph test and the whole catastrophe. And so I felt that I really had, I found, and with all of this going on, what also happened at the same time, because it was harrowing. I mean, this was really stressful stuff. And so my alcoholism sort of took root and blossomed.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. But that's really, so I wrote the book more for my own sanity, I guess, than to tell a story. It was only later that I felt people were watching. This wasn't just about me and my own healing. I thought this could be a story that people could learn from. So then I started writing.
Well, I certainly learned something. I didn't know that Neisner had a gold rush. I mean, I knew about Krunger and Bos because we did it at school. Not that I can remember anything about it. And I knew about elephants, but I certainly didn't know about a gold rush. So how did you research that part of the family?
Well, I'd never really been interested, all that interested in my family's history. And, I guess that happens with age. You want to find out what your family does, what they did. I knew that my great-grandfather discovered gold in the Neisner forests. There wasn't a hell of a lot of gold there. That's why I have to write books, otherwise I'd probably be living in a mansion somewhere. So that in itself is another story, but it led me down that road to do that research, because here was a guy, my great-grandfather, who did discover gold, and when I started doing the reading, he featured in Krunger and Bos.
I saw that in the book. I didn't realize. I'm going to have to read it again.
And there are a number of other history. It was quite interesting just to go into all the books and the literature and to find out about his life. There's a lot of conflicting stories, but there you are. Yes, Charles Frederick Osborne was the guy, my great-grandfather. And he discovered gold in the Millwood forest.
He didn't end up very well, though, did he? I mean, it kind of ripped him apart.
Okay, if I'm going to, I'll have to make an admission here now, is that in order for the story to work, I had to murder him. So,
we have a psychopath.
So sadly, I looked into the history and I couldn't find out exactly how he died. I know he finished up his life here in Johannesburg. What I did go through, and I guess, when you go through your family history, you find out things, and I found out there's a court case that pronounced him insolvent, so there was that to it too. So that was also, but that part of the story I had to make up, so I killed him off. Sorry.
So we have a book that's part novel, part memoir, involved magical realism and a lot of other themes in it. When you were writing conscious of those themes?
I was, or some of them at least. Certainly, I turned my alcoholism into a theme. Now, when you start looking at being an alcoholic, and I've been sober now for 10 and a half years. So when you start delving into that, you start asking questions and where it all came from. And it turns out that alcoholism is genetic. So I was the inheritor. Then you kind of look around, and I shook my family tree, and quite a few items of pickled fruit fell to the ground, and I could inspect those. So that is where that theme came from. My alcohol was a theme that, it was, say, in my blood, but it was in my family's blood. So it was and that's where I came upon that theme. I looked at two things. My cousin was murdered. My uncle was also murdered. So that's two murders in 2 generations in the same family that was unsolved. And so I started looking at it and saying, this must be some kind of curse. So, and then I started shaking the tree about a curse, about murders and alcoholism, and it all seemed to resonate. And then I thought I had to find something really evil and bad that follows this family through this, this curse that follows. What is evil and bad that does that? So that's how come a hyena landed up on the front page, because I turned that theme into a hyena, but it's really generational curses. I wanted to address that in in some sort of way.
Okay, so we have a book, so ultimately there are 4 murders in this book, 2 real ones, 2 fake ones.
Yeah.
So the initial murder gives rise to the family curse.
Yes.
And that happens basically outside Millwood.
Yes.
Millwood is a mining camp, which he names it himself, doesn't he? In the book.
I don't think he names it. Historically, it wasn't called Millwood. It was called something I can't remember now. But yeah. But eventually, around him and around the people of that time, that place became known as Millwood.
And then ultimately, the family moved to Joburg.
Yes, and that they did.
And there are children born.
There are children born. My grandfather, Cedric Millwood Osborne, because now this was going to become a family name. So Cedric Millwood Osborne was born.
So we were entrenching the curse actually into the family name. Yes.
Kinda, yes. That's right.
Is it Osborne or Osborne?
Osborne.
O-S.
Yeah, Osborne, yeah. So,
And this was in the Neisner area.
yes. And my grandfather, or my great-grandfather, that gold was found around about the 1850s, I think. Or maybe a little bit later. My grandfather was born in the late 1800s, 1890 something. I'll have to go and check my notes.
Is there a family tree? Yeah.
There is a family tree in the
I
front.
might have seen one, yeah.
Is that with or without the rotten fruit? The family tree.
I know.
The pickled fruit.
Pickled fruit.
I should
That's
have.
wine.
I should have got a highlighter and marked out where all the pickled fruit is.
This book would make a great set work for school, let me tell you, because it explores a lot of themes. So one of being alcoholism, magic realism, indigenous people who came down into the area, and as well as abuse. And that is a theme that runs through the family as well. I mean, this book is incredibly frank. If you are vaguely squeamish or have no tolerance for delicate subjects, then maybe
I know it's not a comfortable
read.
it's not a comfortable read. No,
No.
It's not. Was it easy for you being honest about what goes on in this book?
Initially it was, because I never ever wrote it with the intention that I'd be sitting here talking to anybody about it. It was more for me to put it onto a page so I could read it, so I could reflect on it and process it. So when I did that, it was more, I guess, for my own healing than anything else. And I have to say that when I started that process, it was once I made a very clear decision to go sober.
I know you can't see it, but there's a woman.
A real one.
A real woman. Not an imaginary one. Hello, Kay. Should I have fetched you this morning? Look, we have a handsome chairman.
There you go. He's the chairman.
He's the chairman. He's called the meeting to order.
Sorry, sit.
Barbara, sit. Sit.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't bash tables.
Listen, if I'd have known there were so many people coming out, I've actually set up properly.
Well, I just thought I was going to be having a chat with you.
Well, we put it aside. We thought we would do it both ways. We would record it for posterity, and
Yes.
we would invite people, and
Okay.
either way, it's going to be seen by people. Because I've got subscribers, a whole 65 of them, but I've got subscribers. Anyway.
It's a roaring trade.
I know. I can earn lots of money off YouTube because of my 65 subscribers, but I'm grateful that they're there in the first place. What can I say? Anyway, so where were we? We were talking about,
Okay.
about abuse, which came down
Yes.
through the family as well.
Yes. So, I do remember now when I started addressing that, and we'll talk about my childhood abuse first. So there was my drunk uncle, and my father died before I was born, and my mother remarried when I was early on. So I was brought up by my grandparents in Chester Road, in Parkwood. And so they had a son, an uncle, my uncle, their son, who was an alcoholic who used to abuse me. So that's really, and I found, that writing, and I've left it in the book, but I felt it was a necessary process for me to understand. I think a lot of people who get abused as kids don't heal from it. And I wanted to make sure that it was not a part of my life that
That you carried through.
that I carried through, or that it made me weird in any way. So but I felt that if I put it down on paper and read it, I could then see it for what it is.
Were your children aware of it before the information went in the book?
Then I'd have that came with Megan Bond, not really, sort of.
Sorry, I was not concentrating. Were they aware of?
Yeah, I'm off your phone now.
thank you very much. So the long-suffering wife is I asked him if your kids were aware of the fact that he'd been abused when he was, by his uncle when he was growing up, or if they learned about it in the book.
No, I don't think they
Not really. It wasn't a thing that.
We've always been very open as a family, and that possibly we had discussed it with them at times. But it wasn't.
But it wasn't a thing that I consciously said, sit down now, we're going to have a very, very serious talk about me. We didn't do it that way.
I found it most horrifying when I read it in your book, when you wrote about it. Even though I knew the whole story, it really hit me, reading it as you did.
So now, it happened in the previous generation as well.
Yes, it did. And
Is that fact?
that is
now we have
fact.
to
And it's funny, my grandfather told me about that. And this is something that's also quite interesting, is because he was, I was being abused by my uncle, but my grandfather was, he was abused, and he told me about his abuse as a boy. But I think that very often silence in these things is the handmaiden of abuse or denial. So, he had kind of touched on the way he was abused at school, when he was at boarding school. And he told me about that, and I don't know what exactly, I was too young at the time to really try and understand why he was telling me that, or even understand at that stage what it meant. But yeah, I was aware of his abuse.
And then while you're living with your grandparents, your uncle gets murdered.
Yes.
And that murder was never solved either.
No, it wasn't. And that was the guy that was abusing me. So, it was, and you're going to have to read
Yeah,
the
that's
book.
right.
You're gonna
That's why I'm not Okay, and then, so at what point did it go from recreational drinking to, is that when your cousin got murdered? Or was it just prior to that? Was the drinking heavy already?
When we talk about alcoholism, I'm married at the age of 23. I went to night school at Wits and did a degree. I worked in the bank. I was a cost accountant. you know, nice people like us don't become alcoholics. I wore a suit. So I'd always had in my mind that an alcoholic was a guy that had an army greatcoat, long hair and a beard, and drank vodka for breakfast out of a paper bag. You know, that was the picture. So I was always like a recreational drinker. But again, you know, it's like that hyena that stalks you. The big A word, you know, I'm not an alcoholic, because there's denial with so much of this. I knew from a very young age that I had some sort of drinking problem, but I didn't quite know what it was.
Never acknowledged it.
And I'd never acknowledged it. I sort of didn't see myself as a problem drinker. And it's odd. People around me did, but I didn't.
And nobody ever said anything to you, okay? You never said to him, you need to stop
Well,
Oh, yeah.
often.
Often.
And a lot.
And a lot.
And it never, like, what are you talking about? I'm not a drunk.
Yeah, I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I get up
So
in the morning and drink, and I run a business, and
So are you running at this point? Because that's
I was.
not covered in the book. His running career is not.
I was. And I suppose, you know, there had been times when I'd finished drinking at 4 a.m, had 2 hours sleep, and then ran a marathon.
Oh my God.
So you
So-
just sweated out of your pores. My mother's, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so my mother hands me 3 little tot bottles and says, "Yeah, gargle with this morning." And I thought, that's going to work beautifully. I better go interview an alcoholic with alcohol on my breath. I don't think so.
I think it was everybody in my wake used to just fall back. So,
So you were like leapfrogging everywhere. Okay, so the running career, does that kind of peter out? Or, I mean, you've stayed involved with the whole process.
look, if we call it a career, I don't know if exactly, but I'd run 4 comrades before, and then I had and there's a book to tell you all about it. I brought the other book too, 5 Hour Pilgrim, is that I had a major motor accident at the age of 35, which really put me out of running. And just briefly, there I was, my brother-in-law was killed in the accident. I survived. And I guess you're going to ask the next question, was alcohol involved? And yes, it was.
Funny enough, I wasn't going to ask that. I was going to ask Kay about how many marathons she's run. But carry on.
But, so I smashed my ankles. I'd broken an ankle very badly, had lots of injuries, and I couldn't run. And so Kay had run her first comrades. I'd run 4. And Kate said, well, what do I do? Do I carry on running? Can I carry, what do I do? Do I stay at home and look after you? And I said, well, look, here's the choice. You can either stay at home and look after me, and we can add to the misery in the world, or you can go out and run with my mates. I heard the answer when the back door shut and she ran down the driveway.
And you have run how many marathons since?
I've run over 300 marathons. but
Well,
only
comrades, how many
And
comrades have you
22
done?
comrades marathons later.
22.
So it didn't make me feel any better. So I stayed at home and started writing about the races that Kay was running. So in my mind, I'd sit in front of a computer, miserable as hell, and I'd say that I knew if the race started at 6 o'clock. Sorry for those that. And I'd click on the stopwatch at 6 o'clock, and then I'd try and say, okay, now where is she? What is the route? And I wrote a route description of the race that she was running. And of course, don't you hate it when people start conversations with why don't you? Because it's going to involve in a lot of stuff you don't really want to do. But it was, somebody had said to me, "What you've got all these road races, these route descriptions on a computer, why don't you write a book about it?" Which is what I did. And at the end, that became the Runner's Guide to Road Races in South Africa. And I wrote it for 30 times.
Wow, are you still in publishing?
I'm still Well, yes, I am. I see myself, I don't know how I see myself, but more and more, because of the knowledge that I have of publishing, every now and again somebody knocks on my door and says, won't you read my manuscript and would you publish it? And so, yeah, and I've done that a few times. So I have a few books that I'm looking at, and I'm publishing other people's books as well as my own.
Let's talk about Kevin.
Kevin, yes.
Okay, so his father was a bit of a recluse as well. He was a very
Yes.
unhappy man.
Yes.
Went through World War One, World War Two.
Yes.
Yes. And then became a motorbike fanatic or a mechanic fanatic. How would you?
He did. So that side of the family. So Kevin and I were only children. Kevin, and he is Kevin Millwood Osborne. Strange thing. And so my uncle Dick, the one that wasn't murdered, and Kevin, they were pretty much their big thing was fixing vintage motorbikes, and he made it was. I think it was more than a hobby for Dick, my uncle. It was an obsession, and so he had passed that obsession on to Kevin. So the two of them used to build old motorbikes, and some of them rare ones. The one that I mentioned, there are a few that I mentioned in this book, but for any of those that are motorbike enthusiasts, they had built a Norton Manx, and I think there were only about 100 of them in the world, and one of them was sitting in his house.
Because I think it's
But
pretty,
okay.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If he wasn't found for a month, that he wasn't exactly the most popular guy in town.
No, he was weird. And I'm going to give some of this away now. He was weird. He was a recluse. He lived on his own. He didn't really like people. He didn't like any other family. I didn't have very much contact with him. And I guess one of the things you'd say is, well, isn't it surprising that I became a suspect in Kevin's murder? And it really, if you look at the facts around it, it pretty much is obvious that I would be the only suspect in his murder because he was a recluse. He lived totally on his own. He had very little contact with the outside world. He just used to live in this house in Glamorgan Road in Parkwood and fix motorbikes. And one of the things that led the police to think it was me, amongst other things, but my daughter was getting married soon, and around that time. And I thought, well, I didn't want him to just find out or not know that Megan was getting married. So I phoned him. And it was really just to tell him, look, I'm not going to invite you to the wedding. And it's not because I don't like you, but it's because you won't know anybody there. You'll be sitting at a table on your own, and I know you'll be feeling uncomfortable. But she is getting married, and what I'm happy to do is to send you some photographs and to send you some wedding cake. And that was the phone call. Okay. So when the police went and looked through all the phone records to see who had phoned this man that was murdered, they found one phone call 3 months before he was killed. Mine. And not only that, there was no burglary. I mean, he had weapons in the house. He had guns with ammunition. They were left. He was tied up, so we know that he was murdered. But nothing was stolen, and the house was wide open. There was no forced entry. So, the police probably looked at that and thought, well, now, there must be one guy who could have only done this. And he didn't die with a will. So when they looked around and with the laws of intestate and everything, the house and everything in it became mine. So I was the only person who had anything to gain from it.
And you had financial troubles as well.
Well, you know, I look at Kay and I said, when you do the work that I do, you do take on the vow of poverty, so yes.
Janine understands that as well. Oh, you're not going to carry on? Do I have to ask a question?
No, you can ask a
I can ask
question.
a question. Okay, so he gets murdered, the police have you in, you go to the house, identifying the body. It couldn't have been pretty.
That was horrific.
Okay.
Now you'd imagine it was on a very hot November, and so he was in the house for a month before he was discovered, and so quite honestly, when I describe it as best as I can what it's like sitting in that mortuary on a Monday morning. It's like a railway station, and so when they showed me the body, it was horrific. I couldn't tell that it was white or male. It was that badly decomposed. So I couldn't make a positive identification, which then led to all sorts of other problems as well. But yeah, that moment in the mortuary was on a Monday morning was, now if you can avoid it, do it.
To die at home in your own bed and make sure somebody checks on you. So we're going down the line now.
Yes.
So the will, the non-will, so becomes a intestate, and then the bank steps in.
Yes.
What happens to the house and Kevin's meager belongings?
Well, let me just say that also when you talk about those meager belongings, he lived on two levels, and this was pretty revealing and weird. So Kevin, we had seen the house, and I'd been in, and I'll tell you now that the first title of the book was not Millwood. I was going to call it The Dark Shadow on the Floor, because he died on, and those houses all these houses around here have those Oregon pine floors. So all of that bodily fluid had leaked out into the floor.
Delicious.
And that removed the body. So there was this shadow of a human on the floor, and that haunted me. But the house was an absolute tip, and the smell was horrific. And everything that was in a cupboard was on the floor somewhere, and so the house was a real mess. One of the most scariest things, and I think you walk in through the front door, and there's this fireplace, or this, those old, and we've got them all in these houses, with a fireplace with a mantelpiece, and on the mantelpiece are 3 porcelain clowns. And I looked at it and I thought, this is the scariest thing I'd ever seen. But the house was in such bad disrepair that there were birds' nests in the curtains, along the curtain rails, and it was horrific. Anyway, when I eventually got some sort of permission from the bank and the police and all the rest of it, I still had to do it under supervision. The police had to be there and watch me. They opened the garage underneath the house, and that was the scariest thing I'd ever seen, because they opened this garage. It's huge, and you could eat off the floor. The floor shone, and there were these 17 motorbikes covered, and they were Ducatis. There were an AJS from 1936. There was a Chater Lee. There were all these old motorbikes that were in absolute pristine condition. And if you wanted to learn something about the mind of my cousin, he had laid out a whole lot of bolts on a table, and they weren't just in a straight line. He'd taken a ruler and made sure that they were absolutely in a straight line. It was that weird, and it was almost like walking into some kind of temple.
And when you started to find out about his motorcycle experience, he's actually quite a a revered character in the whole scene.
Yeah, they both were. My uncle Dick was I don't even know if they have it anymore, but there used to be a motorcycle rally from Durban to Johannesburg, the DJ rally, which Dick Osborne was the guy who started it. Now, and in his life, you could go to him and hold up a bolt, and he would look at it, and he would say, that comes from a Triumph Bonneville 1963, and that one was made in Nashville, yes. So he knew every nut and bolt of every bike that was ever made up until I think about 1960. So yeah, and Kevin was pretty much like that as well.
But you'd never have known it from...
No, I'd got Kevin a job, and I think I'd mentioned that as well. I was a contracts manager in Afrox for a while. And so Kevin lost his job and he is just sitting around at home, and I got him a job in Afrox. And he was even weird working, he was the weird guy who used to sit at the bottom of the factory and eat his sandwich. We would have pointed him, and they pointed me and say, it's your cousin, eh? Yeah.
Oh, I want to know, I have to ask, funny you say that, in the conversations in the book, and there are multiple conversations, do people really speak like that? I mean, yes, like.
Well, the cops do.
I was like, my God, is that how the person speaks? Is there any resolution with regards to the auctioneer?
Oh, no, look, let me...
Don't go too deeply into it, because I don't want to ruin it.
No, okay. No, I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna make a few admissions here too.
God, here we go.
Okay. Firstly, there were a couple of people in the book that I made up. The auctioneer I didn't make up. He's as real as that, but I did change his name. And he was honest and as nice as the day was long.
It's interesting for an auctioneer because they're actually not that honest.
But I thought that I needed to add some kind of twist in the story, so I made him I didn't make him a straight up and down arrow kind of guy. He wasn't like that at all. Okay. And then I also moved his auctioneer place. It's not where I said in the book, it's somewhere else.
Okay. Well,
but there was a fair amount of, shall we say, in that part of the story, poetic license.
There's a lot of poetic license in this book because you don't know where the fact begins and the fiction starts. It's kind of like... So, I mean, the book is very definitely in two sections. It's very definitely so let's say the first third is historical.
Yes.
And then it begins the family dirty laundry, as I said, and delving into the family and your life. And
when I started getting into writing it, not for myself, but I thought, gee, I should write this for a reader. Imagine that, write it for a reader. And that is when I started, I wanted to make that idea of the family curse very much part of a theme. And, where do you start with this family curse but in the bowels of your family? So that's really why I felt that going back into that history was a good thing to do, because it explains a lot about what happens at the end of the story.
What's your writing process? I mean, do you sit and work out timelines, characters, conversations, and keep track of it, or do you just write by the pants of your seat?
No,
Seat of your pants.
I would have to say that I have plans to write other books, but this one, because it started off as a healing process, and then I thought I should do it for readers, and then it was pretty much a seat of the pants, although at some point I stopped. And I said, I can't do it like this. I mean, I trained as an accountant. So, how an accountant needs to know that stuff is going to balance. and you want to know how it all hangs together. So there was a point where I said, I want to know how this thing ends. So a lot of the ending, I spent an awful lot of time on that while I was writing the middle of the book too, because I needed to know how it was going to end. And I have to say that ending eluded me it drove me mad.
And then the publishing process. So you said
Yeah.
you found an editor and off the book went.
Yes. Well, off the book went, just like that, like falling off. Yeah, and okay, we were talking earlier. I've written this book took me 10 years to write. So how's that for patience? And I've written it 4 times.
We think perseverance, we don't think.
But then, of course, I'm a long distance runner, so that's okay. You know, And the first time that I'd finished this book, I sent it off to an editor, and that was Tracy Hawthorne, who I was warned of. He said she's an old battle axe, so watch yourself with her. And I sent it to her. 2 weeks later, she came back and said, this book is crap. And I said, oh, okay, why? And she said, it's schizophrenic. I don't know if it's a murder mystery, or I don't know if it's an alcoholic confessional. What the hell is it? People are going to get confused if they read it, she said. She spoke like that. And so she said, it has to be one or the other. So I said, well, which one would you do? And if you write it, then I'll edit it. So I said, okay, I'll make it the murder mystery. So I made it the murder mystery, which means now if you can't have a story that says, my cousin got murdered, they thought it was me, we don't know who did it. I mean, that's not a story, okay? So I did, my cousin was murdered, they thought it was me, I got somebody to help me find out who murdered it, and that part is true. And then to end it to say, we caught the guy. That would be a good story, huh? So I wrote that, and I sent it to her. And she said, yeah, this is starting to make sense, but you can't put Tom on the cover and put Tom in the book. It's weird. Change it. So I changed it. So I kept my name on the cover, Tom, and the guy that it happened to I called him Fred. He said, God, why Fred? Well, my father's middle name was Frederick, so I called it Fred. So Fred did this, did that, the other, we caught the guy. And I sent it, then I thought, and she said, no, that's great, get it published. And I thought, before I do, because I was not feeling comfortable with it at that point, because I just didn't feel comfortable. It might have been a nice, Tracy put holy water on it. Nice book, Tom, you've written it well. But I thought, there's one person that I need to send it to, and that was my daughter who lives in the UK, who is the most sternest critic that I ever had. And she read it, and she phoned me and she said, what the hell's the matter with this book? She said, halfway through the book, you wander off into the distance. We can't find you. You're not in this book. Who are you? So I said, well, she said, no, it's crap. So the 4th edition I really wrote to satisfy my eldest daughter in the UK. And then when I'd finished it, I sent it, she said, yeah, that's good. Yeah, now I see you. So the 4th edition, but now I had lots of problems with it because, I mean, here's the story. My cousin gets murdered. The cops think it was me. We don't know who did it. I got drunk. How's that for a story? So then I had to say, and then I got sober. Okay, now we're starting to make a bit of sense here. So that was really the process until I got to it and I thought, it just doesn't feel right. It's not good. It doesn't feel right. At the time, I'm going to give this away. At the time I was reading 2 books. The one was John Boyne's The Absolutist. And that's where I thought, this book really, it was profound in not just, but that, so there was a piece of that book that I could pull in and put into there, and I did. So our big admission is that that was a book that inspired me that at least I could see a way now how I could end this thing, that I could make it a good ending.
What was the other one?
Hemingway's Old Man in the Sea. You know, if you're going to reach high, reach to the highest place possible.
God say, don't read Dostoevsky, right?
And how Hemingway ended that book left me, and the first time I ever read it was in matric, and it left me stunned then. And I was really crap at school and not a great reader. So when I read that, it absolutely left me, it left an indelible mark on me, and I thought, I'm going to go there. So I went there to end the book. And so I felt, and once I had done that, I felt, yes, now we can get it published.
Have you got a favorite piece you'd like to read to us?
Maybe I should read the part like Monday mornings when you kind of land up. You know, at every other launch that I've done for this book, I burst into tears. I have to warn you. I'm not going to do that this morning.
No, we like pure emotion.
So I'm going to find some of the grungy
Okay,
bits.
I'm going to
there.
speak to the long-suffering wife in the meantime.
Do that.
What was he like to live with from 2014 until 2016 or 2017?
It was difficult. It was very difficult.
So he was at his worst.
Sorry?
He was at his worst.
Yeah.
So was running an escape for you as well?
I ran my last Comrades in 2015, so it was like I was coming to the end of my running career. I've got very close friends. My children were very important in my life. There's also, his alcoholism was really quite difficult when our children were teenagers. I had to do all the midnight lifts and all the 2 o'clock in the mornings and things.
Have I put you on the spot?
But
Little.
I stuck it out. And I'm so grateful I stuck it out. I did get to the stage, and it's in the book, where I said, well, that's it. And I was very, very sad that that was it, because we were about to have our first grandchild. And I want to tell you, there isn't a grandfather on this earth like Tom. We had 2 little girls with us last night. He's just fabulous, and we nearly lost him. And I'm very grateful that I could work with Tom for him to get to where he is now.
It's quite amazing.
We've been together since we were teenagers. And I think we read something the other day about love and about how every decade you change.
I read that. It was wonderful.
And I thought it was so wonderful.
Every 10
That
years there's a different...
you change and you change together, you work together, and we've been through a lot together. I cannot tell you how grateful I am that it didn't come to me saying, this is it, this is final.
You'd have probably drunk yourself to death if that had happened.
I probably, and if we get there, let's stay there. I found that I basically had a choice. It was either my love for wine or my love for my wife. And that was the choice. And it sounds weird that you actually get to a point where you have to make that choice. But I was at that point. And, you kind of look at it now and you think, it's just such an obvious choice. But there were times when it didn't feel like that. Okay. So, Monday morning, guys. On the Witwatersrand, and I'm not a great reader, but here we give it a go. On the Witwatersrand, there's always proper warning before a storm broke. Clouds began to build up in the south, beyond Alberton. The sky darkened and thunder rumbled, first in the distant horizon and then rolling over the veldt as the tempest enveloped the city. Lightning scratched the sky as cannons blazed. Pelting rain hit, big and painful as schoolboy marbles. Blinding sheets of water ricocheted off the steaming roads. I was spending yet another weekend trying to make my ailing publishing company work. I needed to sell more books, make more money. I'm sorry, my love, but I'm going to have to extend the bond yet again. Kay was ever sympathetic and patient, but even she was becoming worried. Some of my most obliging creditors, printers buckling under their own financial weight, were pressing harder than usual. Bing! A private message for me on a Facebook. My heart sank. Please, not someone asking me for money. The tiny electronic bell was the only warning before the other storm broke. Hello, Tommy. Tommy used to be that's what I was known at school, so it was more or less a guy from young age. Hello, Tommy, I'm in East London right now. Can you call me urgently? Jolyon. The message was followed by a cell phone number. Jolyon Melville was an old friend of Kevin's. I remembered him from our youth. I immediately picked up the phone to call. There's no easy way to say this, Tommy. The silence stretched. I thought the line had dropped. Kevin is dead.
Well done.
I thought this was... I stared at the blinking cursor on my laptop.
Would you like me to take over?
No, I'll have some water. A fly landed on the rim of my coffee cup. The world hadn't noticed. Far beyond Alberton and Heidelberg's veldt, the meaty fields, I could hear a dull rumbling. I heard Jolyon's voice break on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, I really am. The police are looking for you. They're looking for Kevin's next of kin. Before comprehension could take root, a shocked numbness settled between us. Not awkward, just heavy with grief. Thank you, Jolyon. I'm not sure what I must do. You must just phone June Walsh. I'll text you the number. Now, June was an old, well-established resident of Glamorgan Road. The neighbourhood may have changed occupants over the years, but like the jacarandas lining Glamorgan Road, she was a remnant of earlier, long-forgotten days. Kevin, oh dear, you boys, I remember you boys. Her voice was parchment thin, barely there. They've been looking for you, you know, the police. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. Who's looking for me? The police. Over a week now, you must call Colonel Reddy. That wasn't his real name. I put down the phone and stared out the window. A voice deep within the forest gloom of my imagination whispered, "Here, dig." As I was handed a spade, the storm was upon me. I can do this. Once before. Wait, I'm going to go somewhere else. Early on Monday morning, my cell rang. Is that Tom Cottrell? A male voice, slight edge to his accent, Lenasia, I guess. My name is Reddy, Colonel Reddy, from the South African Police Service. I have a message to call you. Ah, yes, Colonel, thank you. I believe it's you who's looking for me. In connection with my cousin Kevin Osborne. We agreed to meet within an hour. The Rosebank police station wasn't a cheerful place. Most of the fluorescent lights in the charge office didn't work, and those that did flickered. The place reeked of government bureaucracy. At the charge office desk stood a long and dishevelled queue of what I assumed were students, the sergeant stamping and confirming true copies of originals. Clouds hung dark and low, the air still. It was going to rain again soon. It was November, huh? The duty office avoided eye contact. The colonel is in a meeting, he said. I sat in the waiting room for an hour. Nobody spoke to me. My name wasn't called. I considered leaving, just walking out, pretending none of this had happened. Then a voice behind me, "Kan ek jou help?" See, they do speak like that. Turned a thick-set sidearm and 3 stars. Not the colonel. I'm here to see the colonel, I said. My voice cracked. About my cousin Kevin Osborne. You've been looking for the next of kin. The cop blinked. Something shifted behind his eyes. O my focus, is jy daai ou? But he did speak like that. Okay, now again, this is the part I really want to do. In the flatland streets screeched with delight over the ending soccer games. Wait. Here. Here we get to the morgue. I drove through the tail end morning traffic to the Braamfontein address given here by the captain. Murdered, tied up. I was sweating, I needed the toilet, I was nauseous. I parked the car. I felt a little faint as I crossed the busy road to the unremarkable grey building that housed the mortuary. A car hooted its irritation, I barely noticed it. As on any given day, the Johannesburg mortuary on that late Monday morning was a boiling mill pond. It was there in that the violent excesses of the overgrown mining camp were washed up. I sat in the crowded waiting room, the sticky early summer edging its way uncomfortable presence into the stuffy space. Outside, the urgent repeated call of a Piet Vrouw foretold an afternoon thunderstorm. It's funny how you remember those things. So yeah, I remember I was sitting there and you could hear, and I thought, it's going to rain soon. In front of me, several seats ahead, a family, a mother, a father, 2 teenage children huddled oblivious of their indifferent surroundings. A settling cloud of grief cloaked them. The woman wore an expensive coat and matching hat. Her husband, well-fitting 3-piece suit, bereft and hot, overdressed for this place. And for this time of year, they tried bravely to console each other. A young man came through the door at the end of the room, shock frozen on his face. Who had he come to identify? A mother perhaps, a father, a sibling, maybe a cousin? What about a girlfriend, a lover? As if in a daze, he stepped out into the sunlight beyond the seated crowd of waiting mutes, doubled over in agony, vomited onto the pavement, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Whatever lay behind that door had a deep human effect. Sorrow lurked beyond that municipal grey portal. The Hot family were next. They were in that room for a while, and I began getting anxious and irrationally impatient. The door eventually cracked open and they emerged. I saw their changed faces, their altered body language. They took a deep breath. The dread was palpable. The wide-eyed teenagers were silent as they filed out. In the street, the whole family wailed with grief. Mr. Cottrell, Mr. Thomas Millwood Cottrell. I think I'm going to stop there.
Yeah. Questions. We start here. Welcome.
Yeah, did Kevin suffer from schizophrenia? That he was so untidy in his, living, yet his workshop or garage was so tidy. Was there mental illness in that regard, or don't you know?
I don't know if it was schizophrenia, but I do feel that there was some sort of mental illness.
OCD maybe.
but I felt that his the way that he avoided people was it was really something deep. That
On the spectrum of.
and you know, when you just look at how he lived, definitely he was on a spectrum somewhere. But I think his mental illness was more about avoiding people and crowds than a schizophrenic. I think the schizophrenic was that he lived that his life was he was an absolute perfectionist at what he did. And I think that his life in that garage was where he became alive. I think for the rest of the time he was dead. Alive but dead.
Yeah, thank you.
That might have been schizophrenic, yeah.
It sounds more autistic.
I think you're right. I think I think he was pretty much autistic in that way.
Perfectionism in one aspect of life is a part of autism.
Questions?
You mentioned the motorbikes from Durban to Johannesburg.
Yes.
My dad and his brother did that run. His brother, I think, was in the sidecar.
Okay.
Wow.
And they would probably have known my uncle.
My father did the same thing.
Yeah.
In Pretoria in the early 70s.
Yes.
He used to go on his bike and he'd do the Pretoria Durban run
Yeah.
every solid year, and he'd leave my mother behind, and she was most distressed. She didn't like motorbikes.
You mentioned June Walsh. I was her tenant in the little cottage.
Oh, really? So she lived out on the
On the
corner?
corner of Millwood.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was lovely.
Yes. She used to come and moan at us because we used to play cricket in Glamorgan Road. And, you know, when the lights came on, we declared it like a day-night game.
Glamorgan Road, where is that?
So, in Parkwood,
okay.
you know where the Everard Gallery is?
Yes.
That's Chester Road. It's one of those roads that go off.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Did you make a lot of money from the motorbikes? Were they worth a lot?
Good question. And in fact, no. But the one that kind of disappointed me was the Manx. Because the Manx, I think, was the jewel in the crown. And there were, and I put all of those on auction. I wasn't going to take any of them. So it went on auction, and there were people phoning in from the UK that wanted to buy the Manx. And in the end, it got sold here, and not for a hell of a lot of money. As rare as that bike, I think the guy whoever bought that bike got a deal, a real deal.
Because he sold it on, obviously.
He probably did, but you know, at that stage, my mindset was that I wanted to just be rid of all his possessions and the property and everything. I could have kept it. Whoever bought it really fixed it up and sold it for a fortune, but good luck to them. I was happy to be rid of that, and yeah.
Yeah.
What happened to the 3 clowns?
Sorry?
What happened to the 3 clowns?
The 3 oh God, I took them home with me. I don't think they no.
You could probably buy them in Millwood today.
No, I think they're still
No,
in
that's
inside.
where they've gone to the, what's the called in Millwood?
You know, what had recently happened, there were a few things. I kept those clowns for a while. Yeah, and I think, and then what had happened is very recently, I made a swap with my daughter. I moved into a 1-bedroom flat now in Riviera, and she lives in my house in Greenside Road, where all that stuff was kept. And there was a huge amount of stuff. So yes, those clowns are probably now sitting down the road in Linden at a charity shop, if they haven't been sold already. I mean, they probably were snapped up immediately.
Gotta ship it out there. Yeah. Look, they got a story to them. Any more?
It's interesting you say Colonel Reddick, Colonel Reddy actually was in charge of Rosebank Police Station when my kids were at Rosebank Primary.
Okay,
That
no,
was before.
okay, that might have been his name then. I changed the name. I can't remember what his name was. Governor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And all Indians in
Yes.
charge of Rosebank Police Station.
Now there were some names that I changed, and you'll come across a guy here that I called Henny. Was the private investigator. He's real, but I changed his name. That wasn't his name. I used a mate of mine was what's his name? Rory Stein. His name's in the book, and he's correct. Now Rory was a mate of mine. He used to be
You wrote a book on Mandela.
yes.
Yeah.
Now he used to be the station commander at Parkview, and then they asked for volunteers who was going to be Nelson Mandela's bodyguard, and he
That's
put up
right.
his hand,
That's
and
right.
blow me down, he got the job.
Yes, and you wrote a very interesting book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I published his book,
Oh,
and
okay.
and so I went to him now that he was this great big famous policeman guy, and I said, have you got anybody who can help me look in, because the police were never going to make any headway.
They were still focusing on you.
Yeah, well, eventually, and they, I had to go to the cops there and say, look, can't you make a deal? You keep hassling me, you keep phoning me. I mean, every time the phone rang, all I wanted to do was make a big poo. And it was, and it was always somebody from the cops wanting to check something, and you got to go and sit in those rooms, and it's frightening.
That's horrible.
So I went to them and I said, can't we make some kind of, we got to close this thing. You basically are getting nowhere, and you know it's not me. Can we make a deal? Said the guy, yeah, all right, we'll make a deal. So he said, would you be prepared to sit a polygraph?
Wow.
And so I said, okay, if I do that, and I know that it's not legal, but if I do that, will you leave me alone? And so they said, okay, deal. I want to tell you how frightening it is to sit for that, even though I knew that I was innocent. And they wire you up, and the guy, and I tell you, it's more or less like what it is like in the movies. It's sort of a bit like that. What they do though is they give you the 10 questions they're going to ask before you even arrive there. So you know what they're going to ask you. And then they say, now we're going to ask you these 3 times. Now, and you think, they're easy questions. Like he's going to say, did you murder Kevin? No. Because some of the questions are phrased to check if you are honest or not. Okay? So the one question that they asked me was, have you ever in your life committed a crime which you have got away with? Now think about that. And you've got a week to think about it, and you think, I haven't paid a traffic fine. I haven't paid I put in too much entertainment in my tax, and so and you think, okay, now that's the question, and you think, if I say yes, they're going to think you're dishonest, and if you say no, so you know, so you find you're in a trap. And I said, I've never done that. And they said, we're going to ask you 3 times. And each time I came to that question, I said, no. And eventually afterwards, after the whole thing, and I got the report back, and they said, we know that you didn't kill him. I said, and they said, we know, because the questions we asked to test your honesty, even though you lied, we know you were honest. But that's how these things work.
What is a serious crime? I mean, what is a crime? Is it serious, or is it?
And you think, well, that's
they walked
what.
across the street.
Yeah, or driven through a red robot.
Yeah. Never. We've done there's a gun amnesty next month if anybody's got any guns in there. I think if that's the no more questions, we will call it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From Millwood, Cottrell, thank you very much.
Thank you for sitting this out.
Well done.
So I didn't cry too much.
Can I buy a copy of your book, please?
Yes.
Please help yourself. There's cheese and biscuits behind you. There's orange cake. There's coffee. There's tea. There's biscuits. Please make yourselves at home. And then feel free to pay me. Got to earn a living somehow. I'm not in publishing. Haven't sworn about poverty.
And you know, when anybody asks me now, you know, can I publish your, you know, will you publish my book? I have to say, I will. But there is one thing you have to answer. There's one question you have to answer first before I even take your book on. Do you have any anticipation of getting wealthy from this? And if you answer yes, then I definitely will not publish your book.
How much is the book?
There's a route in Knysna. I'm just trying to think because I've been on that route. Is it Millwood in Knysna where you can go and have a look where they had mines and things like that?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
go
still
through
there.
The forest. Yes.
And in fact, the museum in Knysna is called Millwood House.
Oh, okay. I haven't been there. No.
And there's a photograph of a rather rotund, jolly fat man smiling with his wife. It's my great-grandfather. Seems like that part of the genetics also hangs around.